Hey everyone, and welcome back to Reading for Fluency. Today we're going to do Chapter 3, and I've had a lot of people ask, Chris, where's your face? Well, okay, I'll add my face. Today we're going to read Chapter 3, okay? So let's grab our books. Oh, look, Lily squealed in delight. Isn't he cute? Look how tiny he is. He has funny eyes like yours, Jonas. Jonas glared at her. He didn't like it that she had mentioned his eyes. He waited for his father to chastise, like, right? Chastise Lily. But father was busy unstrapping and there we go. But father was busy unstrapping the carrying basket from the back of his bicycle. Jonas walked over to look. It was the first thing Jonas noticed as he looked at the new child, peering up curiously from the basket, the pale eyes. Interesting. Almost every citizen in the community had dark eyes. His parents did. And Lily did, and so did all of his group members and friends. But there were a few exceptions. Jonas himself and a female 5 whom he had noticed had the different, lighter eyes. No one mentioned such things. It was not a rule, but it was considered rude to call attention to things that were unsettling or different about individuals. That's nice. That's actually a good rule for once. Lily, he decided, would have to learn that soon, or she would be called in for chastisement. Chastisement. Getting yelled at. Because of her insensitive chatter, right? She's not being polite. Father put his bike into its port, then he picked up the basket and carried it into the house. Lily followed behind, but she glanced back over her shoulders at Jonas and teased, maybe he had the same birth mother as you. Okay, so now we've learned that we knew for sure that they were a weird family, but now we know for sure that they're not all related. They're just put together. That makes it weird now, right? Maybe he had the same birth mother as you. Is there like a baby Is there a baby factory? Ugh. Jonas shrugged. He followed them inside, but he had been startled by the new child's eyes. Mirrors were rare in the community. They weren't forbidden, but there was no real need of them. And Jonas had simply never bothered to look at himself very often, even when he found himself in a location where a mirror existed. That's interesting. Now, seeing the new child and its expression, he was reminded that the light eyes were not only a rarity, not common, but gave the one who had them a certain look. What was it? Depth, he decided, as if one were looking into the clear water of the river, down to the bottom, where things might lurk which hadn't been discovered yet. He felt self-conscious. Yeah, it doesn't look like that, but that's how you say it. Self-conscious, realizing that he too had that look. He went to his desk, pretending not to be interested in the new child. On the other side of the room, Mother and Lily were bending over to watch as Father unwrapped its blanket. What's his comfort object, What's his comfort object called? Lily asked, picking up the stuffed creature which had been placed beside the new child in its basket. Father glanced at it. Hippo, he said. Lily giggled at the strange word. Hippo, she repeated, and put the comfort object down again. She peered at the unwrapped new child who waved his arms. I think new children are so cute, Lily sighed. I hope to get assigned to be a birth mother. That doesn't sound good. Lily, Mother spoke sharply. Don't say that. There's very little honor in that assignment. But I was talking to Natasha. Natasha, you know the 10 who lives around the corner? She does some of her volunteer hours at the birthing center. And she told me that the birth mothers get wonderful food and they have very gentle exercise periods. And most of the time, they just play games and amuse, make themselves happy, amuse themselves while they're waiting. I think I'd like that, Lily said petulantly. 3 years, Mother told her firmly. 3 births, and that's all. After that, they are laborers for the rest of their adult lives. Ooh, that's awful. Until the day that they enter the house of the old. Is that what you want, Lily? 3 lazy years and then hard physical labor until you are old? Well, no, I guess. Lily acknowledged, reluctantly. Father turned the new child on its tummy in the basket. He sat beside it and rubbed its small back with a rhythmic motion. Anyway, Lily Billy, he said, affectionately. The birth mothers never even get to see new children. If you enjoy the little ones so much, you should hope for an assignment as nurturer. When you're an 8 and start your volunteer hours, you can try some at the nurturing center, Mother suggested. Yes, I think I will, Lily said. She knelt beside the basket. What did you say his name is? Gabriel? Hello, Gabriel, she said in a sing-song voice. So like, hello, Gabriel, kind of a loud, high-pitched sound. Then she giggled. Oops, she whispered. I think he's asleep. I guess I'd better be quiet. Jonas turned to the school assignments on his desk. Some chance of that, he thought. Lily was never quiet. Probably she should hope for an assignment as a speaker, so that she could sit in the office with the microphone all day, making announcements. He laughed silently to himself, picturing his sister droning on in the self-important voice that all the speakers seemed to develop, saying things like, attention, this is a reminder to females under 9 that hair ribbons are to be neatly tied at all times. See how it's capitalized like that? We have to make it very kind of sound, right? Kind of like an official announcement. He turned towards Lily and noticed to his satisfaction that her ribbons were, as usual, undone and dangling. There would be an announcement like that quite soon, he felt certain, and it would be directed mainly at Lily, though her name, of course, would not be mentioned. Everyone would know. Everyone had known, he remembered with humiliation, embarrassment, humiliation, that the announcement, attention, this is a reminder to male 11s that objects are not to be removed from the recreation area and that snacks are to be eaten, not hoarded, had been specifically directed at him. Whoa, so he's saving snacks, he's hoarding snacks. The day last month that he had taken an apple home. No one had mentioned it, not even his parents, because the public announcement had been sufficient to produce the appropriate remorse. The vocabulary in this book is crazy. Wow. He had, of course, disposed, gotten rid of, the apple and made his apology to the recreation director the next morning before school. Jonas thought again about the incident. He was still bewildered by it, not by the announcement or the necessary apology. Those were standard procedures, and he had deserved them, but by the incident itself. He probably should have brought up his feelings of bewilderment that very evening when the family unit had shared their feelings of the day. But he had not been able to sort out and put words to the source of his confusion, so he had let it pass. It had happened during the recreation period when he had been playing with Asher. Jonas had casually picked up an apple from the basket where the snacks were kept and had thrown it to his friend. Asher had thrown it back, and they had begun a simple game of catch. There had been nothing special about it. It was an activity that he had performed countless times. Throw, catch, throw, catch. It was effortless for Jonas and even boring, though Asher enjoyed it, and playing catch was a required activity for Asher because it would improve his hand-eye coordination, which was not up to standard. But suddenly, Jonas had noticed, following the path of the apple through the air with his eyes, that he couldn't adequately understand. The apple had changed. Just for an instant, it had changed in midair. He remembered. Then it was in his hand, and he looked at it carefully. But it was the same apple, unchanged. Okay, something weird is happening now. The same size and shape, a perfect sphere, round ball. The same nondescript shade, like unimportant, right? Normal. Nondescript shade, about the same shade as his own tunic, his jacket, coat, something like that, tunic. There was absolutely nothing remarkable about that apple. He had tossed it back and forth between his hands a few times, then thrown it again to Asher, and again, in the air for an instant only, it had changed. It had happened 4 times. Jonas had blinked, looked around, and then tested his eyesight, squinting at the small print on the identification badge attached to his tunic. He read his name quite clearly. He could also clearly see Asher at the other end of the throwing area. I have a throwing area? Okay. And he had no problem catching the apple. Jonas had been completely mystified, confused, amazed. Put it together, mystified. Ash, he had called, does anything seem strange to you about the apple? Yes, Asher called back, laughing. It jumps out of my hand onto the ground. Asher had just dropped it once again. He is clumsy. Jonas laughed too, and with his laughter tried to ignore his uneasy conviction that something had happened. But he had taken the apple home against the recreation area rules. That evening, before his parents and Lily arrived at the dwelling, he had held it in his hands and looked at it carefully. It was slightly bruised now because Asher had dropped it several times, but there was nothing at all unusual about the apple. He had held a magnifying glass to it. He had tossed it several times across the room, watching, and then rolled it around and around on his desktop, waiting for things to happen again. But it hadn't. The only thing that happened was the announcement later that evening over the speaker. The announcement that had singled him out without using his name, that had caused both of his parents to glance meaningfully at his desk where the apple still lay. Now, sitting at his desk, staring at his schoolwork as his family hovered over the new child in the basket, he shook his head, trying to forget the odd incident. He forced himself to arrange his papers and try to study a little before the evening meal. The new child, Gabriel, stirred and whimpered, and Father spoke softly to Lily, explaining the feeding procedure as he opened the container that held the formula and equipment. The evening proceeded as all evenings did in the family unit, in the dwelling, in the community, quiet, reflective. We're thinking back on the day. A time for renewal and preparation for the day to come. It was different only in the addition to it of this sentence is hard to read. It was different only in the addition to it of the new child with his pale, solemn, knowing eyes. Well, there was some real interesting stuff that came up in this chapter, and I'm curious to see where it goes. Now that we have finished the chapter, it is time to take a look at the worksheet. Now remember, you can get this worksheet by clicking the link in the description below and going to the website and downloading the photo there. Just right-click on the worksheet and save as. That way you can print it at home for your students or yourself. Okay, let's take a look at question number 1. What did you learn about birth mothers and their role in the community? We learned a few things about them, and I don't know, their life doesn't seem very good for me. It seems unique, that's for sure. Question number 2. Based on what you know about the community, why do you think mirrors are rare and that there is no real need for them? That was interesting. We put a lot of emphasis on mirrors and our appearance. So what do you think is going on? Why are there no mirrors? Question number 3. How does the speaker help to control life in the community? In this book, we know there's lots of control, right? The community is completely controlled. So how does the speaker control life? Question number 4. Do you think there is any meaning behind the eye color of the main character? I don't know. It was an interesting part to this chapter. We saw him and one other girl and now this new baby, Gabriel. They have the same eye color. What do you think that means, if it means anything? Okay, remember, you can leave your answers in a comment down below this video or give it to your teacher as a worksheet. I'll see you for the next chapter. Goodbye.